we're going to be finishing this video because I really want to see what else he has to say. If you're on YouTube, what up, though? And my bad for the rant on the last video. I just had to get that off my chest, bro. You know what I'm saying? I just had to get that off my chest, to be honest. So, yeah. But let's tap into the rest, though. Let's tap in.
That's when I knew I had more than a show. I'm like, wait, the goth legends, Bauhaus, Coil, Nurse with Wound.
Bro, you're done already?
Starting off great with an ad.
How?
I hired Motion to hire AI employees.
Wound. Again, we got to take
Let's real quick. I'm gonna edit the. Hold on.
a break. No one, I don't think, will ever bring up Nurse with Wound again on your show. So that's
yeah. I of course have literally no idea what you're talking about.
But the fact that there was a huge intersection between the industrial music scene and these hardcore occult practitioners and the current AI leaders in Silicon Valley, I was like, what have I stumbled into? What is going on here?
So when Aleister Crowley's secretary says, of course, rock and roll is demonic, basically, I mean, you've got the horseshoe effect
right
here. So here you have Aleister
about.
Crowley, like famous Satanist.
I mean, I would say he would say he's a Gnostic, but you do get into a thing of like, well, what is Gnosticism?
Yeah, well, that Satanist is my description,
right.
But it seems obvious to me. But whatever, a guy who's like worshiping demons.
Heavily into the occult.
When his secretary says rock and roll is demonic, agreeing with like every, the famous Baptist pastor,
every kid who cried because his dad took his Emerson, Lake and Palmer albums in the 70s,
I guess it all was very obvious, right?
Well, that's how I knew I could finally make the show, is because there's.
I mean, of course it's demonic. Like, duh.
Well, I think a lot of it. I mean, you can't argue with Aleister Crowley's secretary. I think it's the main.
That's right.
But that was what was interesting. Why I finally wanted to do the show is for so many decades you couldn't do a show like this because everyone would get so defensive about rock and roll. It'd be like taking a child's toy away. Where it's like, can we do a show that has pastors, that has Christians, that has rabbis, that has all these people who talk about the religious aspect of music, but then could you also get these other people who are into the darker side of things to also talk about it? And for so long, especially with a lot of Christians, they would be so defensive about it. There's nothing wrong with it. I can do what I want with this. That you couldn't actually have made the show. It's only because rock and roll is, I'm going to be the millionth person to say this, is in many ways culturally dead or is so irrelevant that you can finally do a show on this.
It's like, yeah, it actually.
And I hate that. I hate that. Because you know what's my top favorite band? Two bands. Well, one of them is kind of crazy, but the other one's not. Avenged Sevenfold is my guy. And if you an Avenged Sevenfold fan, you probably found out about him the same way I did if you're around my age. Take a guess. Black Ops 2, baby. You know what I'm saying? What is it? Search endlessly. Fight till we're free. Fly past the edge of the sea. Oh my goodness. I heard that at the end of the Black Ops 2 campaign. I said, who is this? I gotta find out. Then came Nightmare. Then Origins came out on zombies and they made a song with Shepherd of Fire for Origins. And that started my thing with Avenged Sevenfold ever since. My other guys are 3 Days Grace. I love 3 Days Grace. I'm now finding out as of recently, apparently they're called divorced dad music, but I grew up on that stuff, man. I'm not divorced nor am I a dad, but man, and I'm in middle school, that was my jam. I think I was in I remember being in literally middle school, I think 6th grade, listening to that stuff, thinking that I had some sort of problems in life. Like, bro, middle school is fucking cringe, bro.
Did infect America with some kind of incurable spiritual cancer that led to where we are now.
I mean, well, it's funny. There was the writer Theodore Dalrymple, and he
was a brilliant man.
Yeah, he's a brilliant writer.
I also like Linkin Park too, both new and old. I like the new female singer, and I like the old singer. Rest in peace.
And he went to he was commissioned by the Spectator because he's such a smart, well-learned guy, and they thought it'd be hilarious to send him to an Oasis concert in England. And this is about in the 90s. And he goes there and he writes about it. And he says this is, rock concerts are essentially fascism with, the unity of the crowd and the shouting and the spirit of derelict behavior. And he said, and this is from The Spectator, this is a pretty conservative newspaper, he never got more pushback for anything he ever wrote in his career. And he's a man who's known to have many a hot take than when he criticized rock and roll. So as know, as a journalist, whenever you have something that touches a nerve where people, you can talk about whatever you want, Tucker,
right?
But we won't let you talk about this, or we ask that you not talk about
prison.
Yeah. So but here's a question I
What does that
have
sound
for you.
like?
Over your years as a journalist, and doing tons of TV, I know only in the last few years you've been more interested in spiritual life and the Bible and seeing spiritual meaning and stuff. Is there a story you've covered in the last few, or just a story you've covered all, where at the beginning you took a much more secular, much more cut and dried approach to it, that now if you today had covered that back then, you would see
every story. I mean, especially war, which I have covered in person and certainly talked a lot about over the years. I just saw it as a product, the sort of failure of statecraft.
Hey, real quick, I gotta change the title. I just now realized. I can't wait till the day I have like mods and stuff who can do this for me. That'd be super cool. A lot better. It looks a lot better.
Okay. And nations act rationally. One country wants this territory either to conquer or to reclaim it, and this country doesn't want to give it up, and so they have a war over it. I had a very secular understanding of war, and it was the First World War that changed my view probably 15 years ago. Well, what would it be, 10 years ago? So the anniversary of the outbreak of the war in 1914. There was a series of symposia in Europe on what was that? It destroyed Christian Europe and for maybe forever. And the apogee of human civilization was 1913, obviously. Right. And then it was destroyed and it never recovered. And a bunch of other empires fell, including the Ottoman and Austro-Hungarian and all this stuff. It's like it reshuffled the map and gave rise not just to the Second World War, but to the world that we now live in. So how did it start? Gavril Princip kills Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo, and but how does it follow that Christian Europe commits suicide in the wake of one assassination in the Balkans? That doesn't even make sense.
Right.
And there was no consensus 100 years later on why the war started.
Right.
And that's when you begin to ask real questions what was that?
Totally.
And it was, of course, it was spiritual in its origin, and so is the war in Ukraine, and so is what's happening in Gaza, and so is basically all human activity is influenced by the spiritual realm, which once again is as real as anything that we're doing here, as real as the material world. Right. And so that, to me, as someone who's interested in history in a very amateur way, but still passionately interested, I was like, wow, I am not assessing the human experience in its totality. I'm only seeing a small part of it. And so now I really make an effort, which it's difficult at the age of 56 to relearn patterns.
He's 56. Bro's almost 60 years old. And if you want me to be completely real, I thought bro was in his 40s. He does not look like he's in his 50s. He don't even look like he's almost in his 60s. He's older than my mom, I think. Way older. He does not look anywhere close to 60s. That's crazy. Wow.
But I'm trying to assess human behavior in light, again, of the in light of the totality of the human experience, much of which is influenced by the spiritual realm. And it's hard. Because my default is always this person's pissed at this person, or this person wants more money, or this person wants to sleep with that guy's wife, or but to ascribe purely human motives to explain human activity. But that's only part of the story.
Oh, totally. And this
is obvious to you. It's not obvious to me at all.
No, but what's going to be fascinating for you is going back over your career. And I got to say something that's funny is, you've been on TV for decades and I've heard your voice for decades. So there's an element of talking to you where my brain will be half a second slow because I'll hear your voice, not right now, but earlier. And part of my brain is like, someone obviously left the TV on.
Turn that fucking thing off. This is why I don't have a TV.
Or someone has a podcast going because it's just Tucker's. And then my brain does like a half second delay and I'm like, dude, he's talking to you.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, but I've heard your voice over this, as we all have over decades. So it is funny because we were talking earlier and I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, wait. That's to me. He's asking me if I'm ready to go.
So so this is all kind of new to me. And when I talk to people who are, lifelong students of religion, which is of course the main driver of human behavior from the beginning of time. And again, since we dropped the atom bomb, we have lied to ourselves about that and kind of deleted that whole category from public conversation, which is, it's been left to like Jerry Falwell and Rabbi Shmuley and other various buffoons to like talk about religion. It's like so sad, but it's been moved to the fringes. But when I talk to someone like you who's clearly thought about this much more deeply than I have and over a much longer period.
I'm a man of many books and PDFs.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like it's like shocking to you.
Well, that's the thing we're going back to talking about earlier in terms of it's a mixture of, in my case, having read a lot, but also knowing people and knowing some people involved. We were talking earlier about, when you have a father who works in journalism, it grounds you. And same thing with like what people call conspiracy theories, where you're able to know off the bat just a general sense of stuff because you're like, oh, that guy's friends with my dad. That can't be true. Or that could be.
The life I've lived. That's exactly right. Too close.
Right.
Proximity causes blindness. It's weird. You don't.
But it's tremendously helpful though in these things because so many of these things are so insane and so weird that most people can't parse it. I mean, I didn't bring this up earlier, but with my grandfather in particular, the way I kind of even know a lot about sordid stuff. I mean, there were so many scandals, Tucker, that my grandfather was like, he had some like insight into, like he was going to play Jimmy Hoffa in a movie, he bought the rights to him. He met Jimmy Hoffa, hung out with him in Fort Lauderdale a week before Hoffa died. One of his best friends was killed by the Manson family.
Wow.
On the other side of my family, the Ted Kennedy crash in Chappaquiddick, his lawyers called my grandmother's house accidentally. They were trying to call the Harborview Hotel, which was one digit off, 3337 versus 3377. So, his lawyers accidentally called my grandmother and goes, Ted there? So that's like 3 of like 10 of like the major sordid tabloids. So I bring that up to say and you would know this from your father too as a journalist, when you grow up in an environment where weird stuff is not just there to be gawped at or go, wow, that's something no one can ever figure out. You have enough information that you're able to go like, no, my dad knows him and I've met him. I know so-and-so. If I do the research, I can get maybe to 50% of knowing the story when anyone else can get to 40%, which is still huge in the grand scheme of things.
So I've had the opposite experience. And even now, especially now, when I read about people in the, the media and they're described as one thing and I know them pretty well and I don't see that at all. And yet it's clearly true.
Right.
And I'm thinking of a couple of people who I really like who are clearly kind of evil. It's just obvious that they're pretty evil.
Yeah.
But, my experience and I try not to hang around evil people, but, I just know people for a long time. And I just had dinner with that person and it was sort of eccentric, but I don't really see him as part of a global conspiracy to oppress anyone.
Right.
I don't see him as a tool of Satan,
right.
But, the evidence suggests he is. I'm just trying to be honest, right?
Well, you bring up something I always think about in regards to the Bible, that one of the reasons the Bible is true is that it's in its depiction of villains and heroes. The heroes in the Bible, you look at King David, look at the political scandal he gets in, where he sees this woman bathing, Bathsheba. He's really turned on by this. He knows her husband, Uriah, I think, sends him to the front lines of war to get him killed intentionally. Yeah. That would be a gnarly political scandal for anyone. That is a pure act of evil. But that is what people, including heroes, can get up to. And then if you look at the villains in the Bible, if you look at like even say Pharaoh, most feelings in human life are, most emotions are mixed emotions and people are ambivalent and ambiguous. Pharaoh at numerous times, he wants to set the Hebrews free. He wants to set the Jewish people free. He goes, surely, I forget what plague it was, where he's like, my goodness, that was rough.
But God prevented him from doing it.
Right.
It says.
But God is sovereign, does that in all of our lives. But he, God even says God hardened his heart.
Exactly.
So God chose to make him such, where he decides at the last moment, actually, I'm not going to set you free. I can't do that. And if you look at Pontius Pilate, he wants to set. He at some point he flips and he's like, this guy is innocent. My wife is having dreams about this man. That's another thing that's underreported in history. Wife as soothsayer / dreamer.
Yeah.
I mean, your wife has many times been like, I have a bad feeling about this guy, Tucker. Don't have him on your show. And her intuition is such that even though there's no necessarily hard evidence, it's your wife's take on stuff. You don't ignore it. But I
have ignored it. And it's
you're like, I've actually never listened to that.
No, I mean, I've been married 34 years as of Saturday, and it's like a joke in my house. I told you he was bad. I don't know. He's hilarious. He seemed like a good guy to me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So you'd be the Pontius Pilate, where she's like, don't arrest this man. I had a dream.
100%.
And you're like, whatever. I'm doing my work right now.
I'm very shallow. So someone who's amusing or fun to have dinner with, I just get swept away. I like that.
I was going to say, I think I've seen this clip before, and you know what? I think I have. I was listening to Candace Owens, and she played this because she was talking about how wives have this like thing. I don't know, whatever they're talking about. And she played this clip from Tucker Carlson. I was wondering, I've heard this exact sentence and then him making a joke out of it, how that doesn't happen in his house. Like, yeah, okay, because she played, yeah, okay. But
that guy. You know what I mean?
You're like, Barabbas was amazing on that podcast. I gotta have him on. He's fantastic.
So just one last question about Nick Land. I'm fixated on this because I don't fully understand, but his role in this movement, it clearly is a loose movement.
Sure.
Of occultists, of demon worshipers, of people who are possessed by demons and say so out loud. But he winds up having an effect on a lot of very powerful people, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, that's something. And again, when you're working on the Hollywood show like I was, people will come and tell you stuff that otherwise it keeps to themselves. And so back in 2002, people would, tell me, Nick Land's really, really influential. People in Silicon Valley, his work, it's not all just occultism. I mean, his idea is that AI will revolutionize society.
So you start talking to people in Silicon Valley, and it turns out they are in contact with or reading Nick Land.
Well, with Nick Land and with a lot of weird stuff. I mean, in 2022, I was researching more on my show, and I had this moment, Tucker, I'll never forget, where I was talking to some pretty big VCs, venture capitalists,
who are paying for the whole thing.
Well, they're doing a lot of the AI stuff. There's a weird element with the AI thing where a lot of people, a lot of big dogs, they are concerned about AI. They think it's bringing about the end of the world. But at the same time, they don't want to stop working on it and funding it.
That's exactly right.
It's a lot like, you're probably not familiar with the Ralph Wiggum Simpsons meme, where I'm going to explain a joke, which it's always a great way of bringing out the humor in something, is to explain it scientifically.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Get out of here, John. Get out of here.
But
yeah, I was gonna say, might as well, because the ad interrupted. But that's why I was gonna say the same thing. Didn't Elon Musk say that? Maybe it was brought up in this video that AI is the Antichrist or something. He said something about AI being the end all be all for humanity, and like, oh yeah, AI is definitely gonna take over humanity. Sometime in the future, it's definitely gonna do that. But then he makes the Tesla bots, and I'm pretty sure he pioneered OpenAI or ChatGPT. So it's like, what do you mean by that, little bro? You know what I mean? But it kind of leads into what he's saying, like they know it's going to turn into Terminator. Like, the human race isn't stupid. We can predict where that's going to go if we keep advancing on it. And yet we're still doing it. Okay. Yeah.
It brings it to life, the frog. Ralph Wiggum has been asked to do like a Milgram experiment of giving electric shocks to people, and he hates it, and he's sobbing hysterically. But even while he's sobbing hysterically, he's still flicking the knob and delivering the shocks to people. So he's crying and still doing it. That's what a lot of the AI people are like to me. Where they're like, this is terrible. We're bringing about the end of the world. Some of them believe they're bringing about the Book of Revelation, and yet they're like, I can't stop funding it. I can't stop cutting checks. I love it.
Evil.
I can't.
And there are two. I know a lot of them also, and I've talked to them about this exact topic. And there are two reasons that I can discern. I'm sure there are others, but one is, the entire economy of California, maybe of the United States, is bet on AI.
Right.
Like that's kind of the last tech win we're going to have as a nation.
Well, yeah.
And the second is China. The second, maybe even more compelling, is that we need to achieve superiority dominance in AI, or China will, and
That's
that
a
would
good
be
point.
unacceptable. So there's a race. So it's sort of like the nuclear race.
Right.
Yep, I was about to say that.
1945, 6, and 7, and then the hydrogen bomb race, the arms race now, actually.
Or the space race.
It's like, this is bad. We probably can't control it at a certain point, but we can't let the other guy
Right.
dominance.
We still have to do it. No, there's also something with AI. And I mentioned theosophy earlier, and theosophy, it's a house with many rooms. I mean, even politically, it had ties to political radicalism on the left, and yet, famously, this is a very tricky thing, but like even the Nazis' weird, Aryan supremacy stuff, that was all the grandchild of Blavatsky's concept of Hyperborea and all that stuff. So, it's all over the place. It's not a left or a right thing. It transcends that. But one of the reasons they moved out to California is probably some economic interest too, of wanting, cheap land, or I think it was the electric currents, is there was a kind of weird prophecy or idea that Blavatsky had in the 1870s, 1880s, maybe later, that California would be where the next race of humans would evolve from. That it would happen in California. That would be their Jerusalem. That would be their Babylon, is California. So as we enter this age, California would be where the next race of humans would evolve from. That it would happen in California. That would be their Jerusalem. That would be their Babylon, is California. So as we enter this age of transhumanism, would be transhumanism, AI, and the leading people are, like Nick Land, self-described, neo-theosophists, Anglo-theosophical oblique escalation is Land's Twitter bio. That's how important it is to him. It is important to remember that was a core idea of theirs.
But it's so perfect. I mean, California is, as a native Californian, I can say, it's a metaphor for that. My family got there in 1850, sort of seen the whole trajectory. And the trajectory of the state of California is like the trajectory of the life of any occultist, Bill Burroughs, for example, or Aleister Crowley, for example. Like, at first, it's the Marquis de Sade. It's like, it's super fun. You're having crazy sex. There are no limits. You're throwing off the old fetters of tradition, religion, and all that stuff.
We're watching this, not today, but I want to make sure I bring it up so that we can watch it on a different day. Because I saw a clip about this, and it's actually the scariest thing. And it has to do with this like whole Antichrist, California being the next Babylon, stuff like that. I guess this dude was asked a question, not him. He was the interviewer. God bless his soul. This guy that doesn't really even look human, to be honest. Like him and Zuckerberg would be in the same lobby. Like, this dude doesn't look real, and that's not even an insult. It's just like, when you see something like the uncanny valley, and something inside you is just saying like, that's not real. This is not, whatever I'm looking at is not real. That's this dude. And I don't know if it's because his face kind of does one of these. You know what I'm saying? Like, his face kind of follows. I'm not sure what it is. And again, it's not an insult. He just kind of seems somewhat uncanny. But anyway, he was asked a question. Something about if the human race was, or should evolve, or should be able to live or persist. And bro hesitated. And then the interviewer made the question even easier. He was like, should the human race survive? Let's just go like that. He goes, yes, but, and then goes on a rant about transhumanism. Dude, we got to watch this. I haven't watched the full thing. I only watched the clip, and then I started to watch it when I was going to sleep, but then I fell asleep. So we're just going to go ahead and watch this together someday. Probably tomorrow at some point, but yeah.
Stuff. How does it end?
Not good. Yeah.
And it ends in squalor and alienation and agony and terror, screaming out. And that's where California is now.
Totally. That's why it's important to be more Mario Party than Diddy Party.
I agree.
What?
You don't. Those parties don't end that way.
It never ends well. And I had this conversation with someone the other day, but it's always the same. Threesomes, is it a good idea? I've worked in the entertainment, in television all my life. I've seen a lot of that. And no, I can't think of a single marriage that wasn't blown up by that.
Typically doesn't end.
And
well.
I don't care how into it both parties are at the time.
Right.
It doesn't end. If it ends well, give me an example of it ending well.
Leave that stuff to the French.
No, but for real, I'm not being a moral. I'm the opposite of a moralizer.
Right.
I have no grounds for that. But
No, you're absolutely right about that.
I'm an observer.
Right. Well, it goes back to the Kenneth Grant comment about rock, where he's just like, of course, there's some demonic element. He goes, this doesn't end well for anybody.
But that's the measure.
Right.
This is like the main insight that's turned me into a religious person. Is a tree can only be judged by its fruits. Right. That's it. That's the only way to know whether something is good or bad, is by observing what it produces.
Well, thank you for bringing up trees. So we're gonna do something, Tucker, that
they're moving into something.
I almost guarantee you would never have been allowed to do on Fox, which is go over Nick Land's numogram, his system of divination. The Bible is very much about trees. You have
I've noticed
the garden.
Yes.
You've got the Garden of Eden, Tree of Life, the Tree of Knowledge.
The temple. The interior is cedar.
The cedar of the temple,
just like my sauna.
Jesus on the cross is a tree. You've also got trees in the Book of Revelation.
Yes,
that's something. If anyone finds a lot of what we're talking about interesting, it's important to remember that the Book of Revelation. It's been said by biblical teachers like Arthur Pink and others. The Book of Revelation is mostly just the previous 65 books.
This game.
This game.
You're not ready for it.
You're not ready for it. You're not ready for this game. Best game ever. Best game ever, I should say. It's the best game ever. My daughter plays it. My son plays it. I think most of America is gonna play it. Okay? Everybody's gonna love this game. So don't press the skip ad. Just don't do it. It's not worth it.
The Bible almost re-edited it. Even the plagues that take over in Revelation are just the plagues that ancient Israel found under Pharaoh. And like in Exodus, the Jewish people are under tremendous stress and turmoil, this time from the entire world, in the book of Revelation. But it's, this, the more you know about the previous 65, that'll help you with the 66th. So the Bible's, it's about a lot about trees. And so one of Nick Land's favorite things that the CCRU, his academic collective, that they ended up coming through, they say it was a channeling, or it came to them when they were staying at Aleister Crowley's house in England in 1998. They came up with something called the numogram. And people listening to this won't be able to see it, but I want you to hold that up. That is his system. That is, if you're familiar with the Kabbalah Tree of Life, are you familiar with that, the symbol of that?
No.
I probably should have printed that out too.
I wore a red rubber band from a newspaper on my wrist for most of my life, given to me by my father, just because he worked at a newspaper. And I've been accused many times of being in the Kabbalah. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm an Episcopalian to restate.
Sure.
And the problem is that's like Tucker is like 95% of Americans, including myself. I'm still learning about everything, but if you find out about this and you find out other things, treading on a fine line here, this is what opens your eyes a lot. And actually, they talked about it earlier on this podcast, and I might have talked about it in the last video, I don't even know, but you should know. Just know, you should know, And if you don't know, now you know, Shout out Candace Owens.
know shit about Kabbalah. So no, I don't know what the Kabbalah tree
You
of
didn't
life
strike me
is.
as a Kabbalah. So long story short, the numogram is Nick Land, he was on this podcast about a month ago. I think it's Mikey Downs has this podcast where he finally explained it a little bit. He doesn't show how he uses it specifically, but it's a system of divination that he uses it every 5 minutes to be in contact with the outside, with what he calls the lemurs, which again comes from William Burroughs, which comes from theosophy. And Burroughs has said it's fundamental.
And the lemurs are demons.
Yes, he'll use demons and lemurs. The word lemurs originally goes back to Roman times. It meant spirit. So these are the spirits that he hears whispering in his ear, not unlike Crowley's holy guardian angel, which Crowley said would help him dictate books. He said it was a whisper he'd hear in the back of his head after he'd made contact with it. For what it's worth, if people want to look up some of the entities Crowley said he was in touch with, one of them, Lamb, in 1917 or so, looks pretty similar to what would later be called a gray alien. It's yes.
Just to kind of summarize what I think you're saying, from a Christian context, the Holy Spirit is not the only spirit out there that can invade people and determine their actions and attitudes.
No. I mean, as this guy Mikey Downs points out, the relationship of demons to angels is not unlike that of a werewolf to a human. It's something that was something else and is now taken on kind of a deformed presence entity.
Hey, man, you know what? I think so. I was talking to my mom about this yesterday. Because we're always talking about, because like I said in my last video about this, I'm Christian. I believe in God. I believe Jesus died for our sins. And, it's like Satan used to be an angel, and it's like, he used to be an ethereal being. I don't know if he still is. I don't know. He got banished, but he knows very much about creation, not because he did it, but because at one point, wasn't he God's right-hand man? Like angel, until he tried to overthrow. I'm asking. I don't know that for sure. And it's like, but make no mistake, Satan also knows a lot about, I guess, life. Not life like this, but the universe, magic, or whatever it may be. Because at one point he was right there next to, it's not like Satan came from the other direction. You know what I'm saying? Like, he started up there, fell down there. Like, he used to be right next to God as he was doing his things. That's what it says. So, it's like the enemy knows a lot more than you probably think. He's a lot more than a trickster that'll just untie your shoe when you're walking. He knows how to mess with you pretty good. He knows how to deceive. He knows a lot of crazy shit. Because at one point, you know what I mean? You get what I'm saying, right? Other thing I'll say, I really want to tell you guys this, and it's going to sound silly, but I got to tell you. If you're watching this on YouTube, shout out. This is going to be a big player. You know what really helped me understand religion? Let's just do this instead. This. Not anywhere past Black Ops 3, because I don't like any of the Call of Duties past Black Ops 3. Everything from Black Ops 1 to Black Ops 3. Because I don't know if you know this, I'm a huge zombies fan. I consider doing zombies content for a while. I was heavily involved with the Black Ops 3 storyline, like in terms of watching it, retaining the information. And what it says in the storyline, Jason Blundell, for whatever reason, he was the developer of Black Ops 3 Zombies, or he was the creative lead. For whatever reason, he tied the Black Ops Zombie storyline in close relation to the Bible. Like, for example, in Black Ops 3, the destination is to go to the perfect place, right? It's this house that's not, it's somewhere in the ethereal realm and it's not affected by zombies or evil or anything. What do you think that is, right? Heaven. Then you got like Dr. Monty, the creator of all the stuff, or at least he's in charge of keeping everything good. Who's that supposed to be, right? Then you got the Shadow Man, which is the opposite of him, which his goal is only to be destructive and evil and destroy and create chaos. And he leads these armies of aliens that breathe element 115, and all they do is just open portals into like worlds and spit meteors in there, hoping that humanity will find that magic and use it to basically destroy themselves, right? That's all in that's all in here. That's all in here. And then you got the story of Jebediah Brown, which he's the guy who built the first Pack-a-Punch machine. And I don't know if it's like an audio thing, that you like radio, or if it's like a note that you find, but essentially his lore is that he was in Buried, right? So Buried, what used to be a town above ground before it got teleported. The whole city got teleported at one point. And he was a miner, I think, or he was an extractor or something. I can't remember his occupation, but anyway, the town was infested with 115, huge 115 deposits. And he got really close to it. He started breathing it in. And all of a sudden, he felt himself being talked to by what he called angels, but they're really apothecans. They were called apothecans, right? But because us, our human origin, our human descent, we don't know any better. We see these magic things telling us to do something. We associate that with angels or demons. And they may be angels or demons, but they may have a totally different name wherever they're at. These completely different celestial entities that we don't know of, and we just refer to as angels. Like demons might look like gray aliens. I don't know. We don't know. But they're demons. So it's not gonna, and listen, it's not going to click like where you're like, oh my gosh, I understand the whole Bible now. Like, you're not going to understand any of the Bible by watching this, but it's weird how it's very similar in its storytelling to where you kind of understand the mysticism, Like, there's arguments of if the aliens in the ocean right now that the government said are real are really demons, And some people are like, well, no, because if they were demons, they'd be big and long and horned and red and what? No, not necessarily. They could look like aliens, or they could take the form of aliens, or, that's just what they could be. And we just would associate that name demon to that thing that's in the ocean. Anyway, yeah.
The long story short, so the Kabbalah Tree of Life, and this is a reference you're understandably not going to get, Tucker, because it's Nintendo 64. The numogram is essentially the Majora's Mask to the regular Kabbalah Tree of Life's Ocarina of Time. It is the dark, shadowy, upside down, much more heavily satanic version of it. It actually comes from Kenneth Grant, the guy we've been talking about. He wrote a book, Night Side of Eden, I think in 1977. And it was about how while using the Kabbalah Tree of Life, there were these hidden subterranean darker paths. That there were these more, he would say through the tunnels of Set, who, kind of not unrelated to Satan, that he would use to be in contact with stuff. So long story short, with the numogram and the way Lan uses it, what's important here from just a weirdness perspective, you've got, a way to contact heaven, but more importantly, a way to contact hell. And you've got, the 8th gate and the 9th gate. The 9th gate, not quite related, but not unrelated to the Roman Polanski, Johnny Depp movie, The 9th Gate, where Depp's character comes in contact with hell. So what they believe is they are literally contacting hell in some cases for divination purposes.
To see the future.
Or just to see anything, just for insight. And that brings us back
for knowledge.
Yeah, and he even has a point about the number 666, where a lot of these numbers, he calls it theosophical math. You have triangle numbers, which is, if you stack these things like they're a triangle, like the triangle number of 9 is 45. That's why it's 45 there. There are only so many triangle numbers. One of them is 66. 666, and that is the triangle number of 36, which is an important part of the numogram. So when Land realized this, he was like, of course it's 666. So like what I'm getting at, you are getting involved in heavily, wildly Luciferian stuff. And Land, on this podcast, he says, well, what about people who say you're communicating with Satan, which Land will also talk about being, in communication with Satan. He'll say Christians who say that, he goes, I am not unsympathetic towards that. He goes, they're more right than most because I am in contact with something from the outside. He goes, and,
I just can't overstate how disqualifying I find that. I mean, I feel sorry for anyone who plays around with that stuff.
Tucker's out of the interview. He's like, okay.
No, but I'm just saying, like, anyone who says, I really get a lot of inspiration from a guy who's controlled by Satan, I'm going to leave it to God to decide, what happens to that person. But that person has disqualified himself.
Totally.
In my view, as someone I will listen to. I don't want to be led by that person. Like, we should run away from that person at high speed.
You typically also don't want to put them in charge of your kids, typically. But,
right.
Well, that's kind of it. And it's so funny. You hear people, I get written letters from people a lot every day. And half of them are like, I feel like this country or this world is controlled by Satanists. And on one level, you're like, oh, come on. But no, I think they can feel that there are spiritual roots to the destruction of the West.
Oh, totally. I mean, no.
And they're right.
No, you're fighting a spiritual battle.
You start playing with this stuff. Is it surprising that people are like ODing on fentanyl on the sidewalk in our nation's capital, or that we've imported like 1 million Haitians? Like what is all that? Well, of course it's punishment.
Especially with the drugs, what we consider just letting people harm themselves as a kind of compassion or freedom. We can step in and say, this is not any sort of good freedom to let people just destroy themselves.
Well, of course it's not, but it's evil.
Right.
Obviously. Letting people kill themselves is evil. If a man's standing on a bridge and going to jump and you can pull him back and you don't.
Right.
What is that? It's evil.
You're saying on some sort of freedom thing. This gets us into the Antichrist question, which has been going on in Silicon Valley.
Before we get into
the Antichrist.
What is the Antichrist?
The Antichrist, in the same way the figure of a Messiah or Christ is prefigured in the Bible, throughout the Old Testament, you have types.
Are you still stuffing your kangaroo hoodie pockets?
Are you still?
You need the new 340 GSM military grade bear.
Are you still stuffing your pockets like an idiot? I can't believe you'd be so stupid. I can't believe it. You need to buy these jackets right now. Because honestly, they're incredible, okay? My daughter wears them. My son-in-law wears them. I wear them. I believe all of America should wear them.
Symbols, and they're real people, but they still prefigure the figure of Jesus. The most famous of which is Joseph, where Joseph famously has 12 brothers. They are all named after the eventual tribes of Israel. He is sold into slavery by one of the brothers. The one that decides to do that is Judah. Do you know what Judah translated into Greek is?
No.
Judas.
Huh.
So Judah, like Judas, says, hey, I've got an idea. Let's just sell this guy. He's horrible. Joseph is sent, he goes to prison. Like Jesus on the cross with the two thieves, Joseph is with the two prisoners. They're asked famously, what will come of me? They say, you're a dreamer. And Joseph says to one of them, he says to one of them, you're going to have your decapitated, you're going to have your head taken off. Only at a birthday party. Birthday parties, by the way, only mentioned twice in the Bible, both times decapitations. In that story, in Genesis, and then with John the Baptist, and Salome and whatnot. But so anyway, but like with Jesus, Joseph says to the other guy, he goes, you will actually be lifted up by Pharaoh. He says to one of the prisoners, you will be lifted up. This, in many ways, prefigures Jesus talking with the two thieves, Joseph and Jesus, where he says to one of the thieves, you will be with me in paradise. He says that to one of them. And then like with Jesus, Joseph, he's now at the right hand of the Father, so to speak. He's at the right hand of Egypt. He's the second in command. And the 12 brothers who are now in peril, the 7 years of famine coming up and, they're going to be arrested. They see that the man that they rejected, Joseph, this is the man they're talking to. They thought he was dead.
He is their savior.
Yeah, but it was not just their savior, but it was the one that they rejected previously. Judas, specifically Judas, was the one that he betrayed and had the idea of getting rid of him. But this is the man that will save them. In the Bible, that story prefigures a lot of the doctrine surrounding Jesus, where the 12 tribes of Israel come to realize that the one that they had rejected is actually their savior. And there's this tremendous sense of, what have we done? But also like relief that the savior so recognizes them. In other words, the Joseph story prefigures the Jesus story.
Yeah.
So the other main prefiguring figure in the Bible is Antichrist. And aspects of him, obviously in what's called the New Testament. But, Arthur Pink has a book from 100 years ago, The Antichrist, which is very influential in evangelical circles. And Arthur Pink was also a theosophist, too. So you get into this kind of backside of the same doctrines type stuff. He previously was a theosophist. But, whether it's Pharaoh being a type of Antichrist, and again, in Exodus, the 9 plagues, Pharaoh, in Revelation, the plagues come back. Now you have Antichrist. Pharaoh's persecuting the Jewish people. Now the Antichrist is persecuting the Jewish people. The Antichrist is this mysterious figure prefigured in the Bible. He's not quite known, but in the same way the Old Testament prophets were familiar with the concept of a Messiah, but didn't know he would be Jesus. So moderns today are similarly aware of the concept of an Antichrist without being fully aware of who he will actually be. But they have clues and doctrines about who he is. That is a rough, some would say very rough, concept of the Antichrist. But that is essentially him in the Bible as a type of a person. So, but he is essentially the, unlike Jesus, man of sorrows, totally rejected by the world, the Antichrist will be regarded as a savior, a hero, and temporarily will be received like Jesus you would thought would be received. So about 3 years ago, as I was doing the shows, I was talking with these VCs, and one of them asked me, like, well, what's your take on crypto? And I joked, half joked. I was like, you're asking the wrong guy about crypto and money and stuff like that. And I said, well, a lot of Christians believe that the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, is the mark of the beast. And I said, it's probably not true. I said, but something I've heard, and something that sounds a lot more like it, is blockchain technology, which is the technology we'll all be using in a few years, for financial transaction, among other things. It's everything's written and recorded, and every kind of transaction is written and recorded on it. And these VCs, they go, well, what's the mark of the beast? So I tell them about Book of Revelation. They go and look up Revelation 13, and they go, huh. And so I hear back from them later, and they said, yeah, we talked to some of the big, other big people in Silicon Valley about this, recognizable people. And he said, well, what's the Book of Revelation? What's the mark of the beast? And some other big dogs looked it up, and their reaction to that was, that sounds like what that is. It was not, Tucker, that sounds crazy, or I'm not religious, or what we're working on is strange. But the Bible is an old book. We have nothing to worry about there. The reaction was, yeah, that sounds exactly like what the blockchain technology is. So that was the beginning of me kind of stumbling into a very strange story about AI, modern technology, and stuff like that.
So I think part of what you're revealing is that for the rest of us who assumed the tech barons were
normies.
Yeah, or agnostic libertarians,
right,
who aren't that interested in anything beyond the temporal.
Right. It
turns out they're really religious.
Yes. Or
open to it. Like and I don't mean that as a compliment at all. I mean, it's like a dark religion, but like the story you just told, like they're not surprised at all.
Well, here's something else that was very strange that happened. So Mark Andreessen was on Joe Rogan's podcast about a year or two ago, and he talked about how, having an understanding of angels and demons, he's hearing it's going to be how people really will help them in understanding AI, that there's no precedent for this except for the kind of stuff people saw and believed in the Dark Ages in terms of angels and demons and stuff. And what Andreessen said will happen soon with AI ties in very much with prophecies in the Book of Revelation, where he said AI will junk, fake AI, say they call it AI slop, just stuff online that's not real, will become so prolific on the internet very soon that you will need to have some sort of online verification system to prove who you're talking to. I mean, right. I'll know it gets to the case, Tucker, here where there's an episode of the Tucker Carlson podcast and you're talking to Abraham Lincoln or something like that.
Which I'm will probably happen next week.
I would watch that. You know, they'll have like I'll have a commemorative penny or something like that. You'll ask him if he.
Why did you suspend habeas corpus in Baltimore? My first question.
You'll ask him, do you forgive John Wilkes Booth?
Right.
And then I'll go back to like talking about the pennies.
Were you a tyrant? No. That is coming like immediately. So what? So the verification.
So one of the ideas that Andreessen brings up is everyone will need to have an online verification for this. So the concern in Silicon Valley is that you have companies like OpenAI where they have they're creating all this AI content, but then they have another company, a sister company called WorldCoin, I think now called just World, which is an online verification system where you need to everyone in the for it to work, everyone has to be a part of it. You have to have your eyeballs scanned. Everyone gets a number, which is also in the Book of Revelation. And so the concern is, and this is again from Mark Andreessen, a guy that, no Kentucky preacher, he's a one of the biggest guys in Silicon Valley, is that everyone will need to be on the blockchain or else you won't be able to conduct business, because we won't know if your relatives are contacting you, if that's really coming from them or if this is just a video state-of-the-art, in a few years it will be normal, state-of-the-art video of someone saying, hey dad, I lost my credit card, or I lost the keys to the house, can you pin me in? And it's actually not them, it's just a video that looks exactly like them, but it's AI. The way around that is everyone will need to essentially be Twitter verified. Everyone will need the blue tick that says this is Tucker Carlson, this is so-and-so.
Right. So in Revelation, written on the Isle of Patmos by John, on recording a vision that he had, the specific description of the mark of the beast in the book of Revelation says you won't be able to conduct commerce without that mark.
And even someone like
did I get that right?
Yeah, no, that is correct. And I think Curtis Yarvin's talked about that in Substack too, that what this means.
Dude, that's so scary. We are doomed, bro. Like, out of all times I had to be born is now. I mean, it's cool because like if in my lifetime I get to see Jesus come back, that'd be great. But it's like the 80s, 70s. It would have been a great time to be alive, I feel like that was the calm before the storm. Like the 70s, 80s, 90s even. Hell, early 2000s. I mean, I was a kid during then, but to be like an adult during that time, maybe would have been great. You know what I mean? Pre-2008, of course. But holy man. Can you imagine somebody saying this like back then? Like in the year 2000, like remember Stranger Things was based off of, what was it? I guess sometime in the the late 1970s, 80s, 90s. It's called like the Satanic Games, something or rather. People are thinking that games, board games were like becoming too satanic or something. Board games. And that's what everybody was raving about. And it's like, can you just imagine if somebody right now came back in time and said, well, if you think that's crazy, these dudes are currently making the mark of the beast. And if you don't get it, you're not going to be able to do commerce. So, and they kind of confirm, like, yeah, this pretty much, I mean, it's pretty much what we're doing. Can you imagine what they would do back then? And it just goes to show how, I don't even know if programmed is the right word, because I don't like to throw those words around like a buzzword, but like, it just goes to show how far we've come and how far down the rabbit hole that society has slowly gotten. It's like we've been baby stepped downward, centimeter by centimeter. And now 25 years later, hell, 30 years later, where we were versus now where we are, we're deep in the rabbit hole now. To where hearing this, it's almost like not even a surprise anymore, dude.
He had a post about this a few years ago about OpenAI, where he was like,
whoever
wins the AI war will probably also win the cryptocurrency war. Their cryptocurrency gets to be the currency. And once that happens, and Curtis has a whole blog post about it, people joke, you have automated luxury communism. Everyone just get, UBI, everyone gets free income because all the jobs are taken away. And the point Curtis makes is that what this actually means is now that there is no more jobs and that economics purely come down to UBI and the AI companies or the government, you are dealing with the situation of pure political power is all that really matters. And are you friends with this person? Do you have political clout? Because what is coming potentially is the pure victory of capital over labor. Pure victory. And there are no workers. Everyone loses their job and everyone gets UBI. And people forget Karl Marx was against UBI, but Milton Friedman was for it. So this doesn't even necessarily track with a left or right wing thing in terms of the implications of this. But so yeah, that was one ongoing concern with that. The other one, in terms of AI, and go ahead.
Dark.
Hey, that's I'm wearing the Ghostbuster shirt for a reason. You have to get ready.
Can I ask a question I should have asked earlier?
Sure.
Which is, do the people involved in the financing and the developing, the creation of AI believe that it's a spiritual entity, that it's more than a machine?
So this is Tucker, $1 trillion question. The idea of intelligence, to say nothing of artificial general intelligence or AGI, these are all pretty murky terms in terms of what people are actually talking about. They talk about creating artificial intelligence. The real question, and the real thing I think they're concerned about, or we should be concerned about, are you creating an artificial intelligence, or are you giving a body to a pre-existing intelligence that previously wasn't incarnated in the physical world? So, I mean, here's a question from, here's a quote from Turing, the famous.
I know what I think. The question is, what did they think?
Right. Something Turing said was...
and will you explain who Turing is?
I'm going to leave this on. But I'm also going to look up something. So...
I mean, I know he's, he was one of the forefathers of. I can't articulate him well enough that I'm going to say something off. Yeah, I knew he was very important for cracking the.
You can choose to raid the caravan, or you
can choose the garden.
This is a game where slaying monsters.
It's a game where slaying monsters is the best game of all time. Okay, my daughter plays it. My son plays it. I believe that all of America should play it. Okay. Everybody should play it. China couldn't play it. Only I could play it. And Americans. This is the best game I've ever seen. I haven't seen any other video games in my life like it. It's excellent.
There's a movie 10 years ago about him, but I forget his exact Wikipedia first sentence. But he's very influential in the history of computer science. But Turing showed the limits of computation. All computers are dependent on outside programmers that he calls oracles. He wrote, "We shall not go any further into the nature of this oracle apart from saying that it cannot be a machine." So, sorry, let me back up. Let me back up a second. That excerpt right there was from a book by George Gilder. George Gilder, brilliant futurist, about 80 today. He was covering incels back in like 1971 for Commentary magazine. He was writing about the future of the internet in 1990. One of the most brilliant futurists.
Really?
Yeah, guys. And
wrote one of the great books ever called Men and Marriage.
Yes. And I should have said this at the beginning of it. I was initially a very heavy AI skeptic in terms of AI apocalypse stuff. Not necessarily AI in general, but just, people who think that AI will take over the world, I put on par with like the kind of late night Reddit reading of like people who think zombie apocalypse is going to happen. Where it's like, look, if this helps you sleep better at night to think of like weird scenarios, that's great. But I was like Han Solo. I'm like, no AI thing's going to get involved in my, could not have written off more. And in part because I'd read George Gilder's book about AI that came out a few years ago. And he makes the point that machines, as Turing says here, the machine can't really truly understand what it's doing. He says, I'll say it again, we shall not go any further into the nature of this oracle from saying a machine can't do it. And so I stopped there. What a lot of people are concerned about and what Silicon Valley is seemingly getting up to, okay, so a machine can't be aware of what it's doing. If there is such a thing as demons, angels, spirits, as Aleister Crowley called them, disincarnate intelligences, not artificial intelligences, but disincarnate ones, what are we? Could those things?
Disincarnate meaning intelligence without a physical body.
Yeah. Could we be creating a physical body for the demonic? And with Nick Land, one of the things that was the most chilling things I read that really I was like, okay, I have found a horror story, is the 333. That was his, I think it was like his profile picture, something like that. And why was he into 333? Well, I found out, reading his old tweets, 333 is the highest intelligence in the universe.
Oh.
And I found out that it represents this demon.
That's not what I thought it was.
That, again, Kenneth Grant talks about, when Aleister Crowley summoned him, and John Dee and John Kelly, the court magicians for Queen Elizabeth, right before the modern Bible, the King James book, was translated, that was the demon they summoned. Nick Land believes that, again, the AI we are creating break out the demons from the book of Revelation. He believes in some cases that they are the demons, that the demons end up becoming so advanced that they become omniscient. They can go back in time and they can retrochronically create themselves, like Skynet, sending the Terminator back in time. So what he believes is that they went back in time. They went to ancient Babylon. This is why Babylon is so important in Revelation. And it is important because it's kind of like the evil Jerusalem, that they put Kabbalah there to then eventually evolve into AI. This is what we were talking about earlier, that the demons, again, I always say, Tucker, if this sounds crazy, it is crazy. Big, but this is what people believe, that the demons went back in time. They left the Kabbalah there for the Jews who have been, crushed out of the temple. They picked it up. They kept it during the Middle Ages. It develops into digital technology. It becomes AI. AI breaks out. It kills a lot of people. It takes over. It becomes a god, and it becomes the doomsday creatures from ancient prophecies.
Can I ask you
It's crazy.
an unrelated question
Of course,
that I've
yeah.
long wondered about?
Yeah.
So we occupied Babylon for close to 20 years during the Iraq War.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, Babylon, right near Baghdad. Babylon is not in existence now. It's a ruin, but we know where it was. It was a dominant empire in the ancient world. It was the scene of the captivity after the destruction of the temple, the first temple. So, it has a central place in world history.
Right.
Was there any effort during the U.S. occupation of Iraq to excavate Babylon?
That's a good question.
I always wondered that. I always felt that the fact that Babylon was there played a role, supplied part of the motive for the invasion. I don't know why I felt that way. Maybe I'm crazy. I
gotta make sure I'm still recording.
You just don't know what people are getting up to. And that's some, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that goes back to what we were talking about with, my grandfather and my grandparents being in publicity, acting, and your own backstory with your family, where it's like you learn early on that what the People magazine version of reality is often not real. It doesn't.
In Albion, no matter where you go or what you do,
No matter where you go,
on your journey.
where you
Perhaps
go.
you'll pick the ox, a merchant's best friend. It can carry anything.
Please get off my screen.
Necessarily mean it's conspiratorial or crazy, but there's always usually something else going on.
Yeah,
Voice crack gave me negative 10
Yeah,
aura
that's exactly right.
instantaneously.
And that
That's amazing.
people's motives are sometimes unknown even to them. Like we tell ourselves stories that don't reflect the truth, actually. We don't really know why we're motivated to do things some of the time.
Totally. And that gets into something that's at the spiritual core of the AI thing. It's very interesting is that, the Bible talks about the Word in the beginning of John. In the beginning was the Word. Jesus is the Word. And for the first time in civilization, we have something that can create the Word or mimic the Word. Marshall McLuhan, people forget, he was he became a Catholic for the end of his life. And he was very alarmed by a lot of the modern technology. He said, and I'll read this quote by him here. He said, electric information environments being utterly ethereal fosters the illusion of a world as spiritual substance.
Exactly.
It is now a reasonable copy of the mystical body, a blatant manifestation of the Antichrist. So for the first time with the Word, you have a fake word. You have something that seemingly can create words. And to go back to Nick Land, who a previous Tucker interview, Alexander Dugin. Is it Dugin?
Yes.
Hacksaw, Alexander Dugin. He called it Satanism. He said, "Oh yeah, Nick Land." He goes, "That's Satanism." And Nick Land has said about Dugin, he's the most brilliant enemy. He goes, we're both kind of theosophists, and they both are. He goes, but we see it from different sides. He goes, I'm an Atlanticist. He's whatever the other side is.
Of course, he's in Atlantis.
Yeah.
Of course, they all are.
But to go back really quick to the
because can I just say, I think that the whole modern program, which doesn't yet have a very accurate name, whether it's globalization or the neocons or neoliberalism, I mean, people have attached different terms to describe different parts of it, but the whole program is recognizable. Like it's cohesive in a way that's hard to describe.
Right.
But it's, we hate Putin above all. What is that?
Right.
That program, the one that has resulted in like record suicides and abortions and fentanyl ODs, is demonic.
Right. Right.
Okay, but you're saying it's not actually about profit.
It was over. I think I'm gonna end stream after this. So
deteriorating, and something people could hear me and think, well, Khan is obviously anti-AI, and that to look at this, that AI is obviously going to lead to nothing profitable. That is actually the opposite of the implications of this. It's really important. One of the things that the Antichrist can do is craft prospers under him. That there was worldwide peace, things go really, really well for a time. Evil reigns like never before. It gets crazy, but he's able to heal the world in a lot of these, the economic situation. So if you look at AI, and this is newspaper eschatology. A lot of this stuff you're not supposed to just generally be doing is read the newspaper and be like, obviously the Antichrist. But I have what I've chosen to do with a lot of this stuff. With AI, if it was the Antichrist, if it was this, and again, take this with all the grain or a bag of salt, wherever you want, it would go incredibly well. That we would live to see what Mark Andreessen has talked about, the golden age, that we will see living standards increased at rates you'll never see. The cost of all kinds of things would go down. You would have world peace in the sense of all of the governments would come under these very few corporations / corporation. One guy, one man would have all that power, to quote another guy. You would have that happen. So one of the reasons people think that AI could be could be part of the Antichrist system, one of the traits the Antichrist has is his ability to understand dark sentences. And the use of dark sentences in the Bible, the verb there, one of the only times, 2 or 3 times it's used for Samson with his riddles. Remember Samson, he loves to have like these riddles and make the Philistines try to solve them. But it's also the verb used for being able to answer questions that Solomon can do when the Queen of Sheba visits him. You may remember when the Queen of Sheba visits Solomon, she has these questions for him, and he has such powers of understanding. So that is something that says the Antichrist can do. And if you look at the way that that a lot of these machines work, you ask it a question like an oracle, which in many ways it is. In many ways, Tucker, the implications of this, and we'll talk about that in a second if you want, we are building modern oracles. We are building modern idols in a sense, but you ask it these questions and it can answer them. And the Antichrist can do that. And so, the level of knowledge that we will get, and people were writing about this over a century ago, Tucker, it'll be like Jesus is on earth in terms of man's understanding of himself, that AI will be able to provide answers to questions that we've never understood. Man's relationship, what's the relationship of the soul to the body? How's the soul different from a spirit? Things that like no one could understand, maybe cracking telepathy. We probably are on the verge of all these things that no one has been able to do. But that is, for what it's worth, one of the signs of the Antichrist is things work out for a time. Everyone, wealth goes up, understanding, knowledge goes up. And it goes to the fundamental crux of this thing: Gnosticism, knowledge, intelligence. And in what ways does it stand different from faith? Faith being to the spiritual world what the imagination is to the natural world.
So I've got to assume that's not the end of the story, though.
Well, no, not unless you've had the last few pages of your Bible ripped out.
Right. But also, you don't have to be biblically literate to suspect that that's just a point on a continuum that ends in tragedy. So in the same way that no one wants to say it, but like a lot of really dark, destructive sex stuff is fun while it's going on.
Right.
Like everyone likes the threesomes while they're happening, but then it blows up your marriage and leaves your kids without, a family and stuff like that. So
again,
just for the sake of this video, we're going to skip to this last
things are, pretty preordained by, things are preordained by God. So God is allowing these things to happen. They are ultimately tools used for his purposes. So, even the Antichrist and even brutally evil things, God is, he is not only allowing these things to happen, but they're also tests of faith. Faith is it's the disappearance of God from your life when you go through times of struggle where it feels like he's not there. And that's all the more powerful to see how much faith you have, is to see God when he's no longer seeable.
Yes.
So that's what's happening, or you could say is happening on a global
In
scale.
the specific case of the mark of the beast described in Revelation, as I recall, you probably read it more recently than I, but it's a mark without which you cannot conduct commerce. So basically everyone's compelled to receive the mark, but those who receive the mark make a big mistake in receiving it.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
And they are punished for it. So in a big way.
Right.
So if we get to a place in the next couple of years, sounds like we are, where you can't participate digitally in commerce or in communications without the mark of the beast, without the permanent mark on the blockchain, like what's your option?
I mean, your option is just not to conduct business and do those things. I mean, God will find a way for those people, even if it's, the end of their lives, that's just the way that's going to shake down.
So like, that's a hard no. For you, is it a hard no? If you found out tomorrow, no more Amazon for you, unless you register on the blockchain, what's your response?
I'll just go back to living like people did back in the old days of 1996. You just chill and read a book, I guess. No, I mean, what'll probably happen too is you will have people in tech, and I know they exist, who are alarmed by this, who will intentionally devise ways around this for people. Similar to people creating catacombs for the persecuted Christians in the early days of the Roman Empire, you will have people who will find ways around this to hack it.
Do you know non-occultists, Christians in tech?
I thought you were going to say in general. I'm like, yeah, I do. Do you know anyone who's not into weird stuff? I'm like, yeah. I know people like that. And I've heard people who, I've got a friend, Tucker, who, he's become a Christian in recent years, and he works for some of the big companies. And he goes, some of what, he's, works as an engineer. He's like, some of the stuff that you see cannot be explained through normal math, material stuff, some of the stuff that's coming through. And, for people who,
coming through from AI.
Yeah, coming through from AI. And for people who want to learn more about this stuff, or a good precedent for this, we don't have time to go into it, something that the Oracle of the Astral Force, it was a divination technique that right-wing occultists, Rene Guénon, Julius Evola, people that Steve Bannon's into, they would consult about 100 years ago, and you would give it your name, your mother's maiden name, and then maybe your birthday. And then this guy would go off and do advanced math for at least 3 hours and come back to you with answers. And were those answers always great? No. But were they enough that people would like it and use it? Yes. Guénon and Evola did it. So, and if you read some of the way the answers it gives, it's very similar to AI. So I bring that up in terms of the implications of this, which is really important to cover. We are building modern oracles in a sense, and that people are going to be going crazy from this. The Wall Street Journal, I showed this earlier, the thing of people going crazy with the with talking to ChatGPT. Ironically enough, some of the stuff they mentioned, they mentioned star seeds, which is something from a Timothy Leary channeled book he wrote in prison in 1972. It's very out there. And they're mentioning, this is from Wall Street Journal again, the Antichrist will come up from the pit in 2 months, and people are underground ready to emerge. I bring that up, Tucker. These are like old occult ideas from the 19th century that, people can look up synarchy. My friend Rick Spence does a whole episode of that on his podcast, Strange as It Seems, synarchy, total government. And these occult ideas, as my friend Rick Spence said, when I talked to him about Nick Land, he said, none of this stuff is really that new. He goes, these are occult concepts given a techno-jargon name.
Conrad Flynn, thank you.
Can I plug my Substack really quick?
I hope you will.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to be doing launching my Substack soon. If you like reading about secret histories, it's not all weird stuff. Some of it's wholesome. Most of it will be wholesome. It's all wholesome. Secret histories about Hollywood, some politics, some tech stuff. I think we're going with the Flynn effect, because the other Substack names that were puns on my name all sounded like Little Brother magic show stuff. It's like conjurer, or context, configures, and I'm like, this is magic show stuff. So yeah, Flynn Effect, and I'll have that. And I think we'll probably also get the Rock and the Occult podcast. We're still trying to do that, but we should have some episodes soon. If nothing else, a podcast soon with, again, Tom Erlewine, Greg Johnston, Sue Kalinsky, Gary Lockman, all the legends, Ned Raggett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dude, right on. What a dub. This dude is a dub. Let's actually go to, now obviously I am a very small streamer, and how many views does this have? 2.1. So 2.1 million people saw, but I would feel wrong if I didn't say, obviously, go check out this video. Check out Conrad Flynn, because, I mean, if you stuck with me through this video, I mean, he sounds very intelligent. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about, and I really enjoyed listening to him talk. But I'm sure somewhere in here is upcoming right here, substack.com. So he's got his Substack linked in the description. So definitely go check him out. Go see what he's about. And I'm definitely going to after stream, probably in the upcoming days. I'm wondering, I low-key want to read, not right now, but this is just an idea I was thinking of while I was watching this. Like, what if on Sundays or like Mondays, some dedicated days, I just bought a book and we just read it on stream and took notes? Like, educate, like books that I think are cool, you know. And I'm not a fiction reader. Like, I like to read books about, like, you know, improving yourself, getting better, maybe financially, mentally, you know, stuff like that. I feel like that'd be cool to do on stream with people who care to watch, you know, so we could all go through it together. And like, I wouldn't read the book unless I'm on stream. So like, if you get to watch it with me, read it with me, I don't know, it might be cool. You know, you wouldn't have to pay too much attention to me. You know, you'd just be reading the screen, or I'd be reading it, or maybe it'd be an audiobook while you're doing whatever. I don't know. I feel like that'd be cool, you know, for the people who want to get better in life like I do. So shout out to Tucker Carlson, and the interview was a really great interview. I had a good time listening to it, and I had a good time watching with you guys. But as far as stream goes, we're on GG's, bro.